Hey, how's it going? And today I'm excited to bring this tutorial on how to create an HDRI floor plane in LightWave. And this is important as part of my Envirosphere or SkySphere environment. And actually, if you can create the floor plane, the SkySphere is super easy. I've been messing around with this. I don't want to tell you for how long, but I finally got it worked out pretty clearly, and so I'm just excited to share the steps. And I'm just feel free to experiment. This is just kind of the basics. So I'm in Modeler right now, and if you can get this floor plane done, you can get the whole thing done. This is the most tricky part. I don't know why it's so tricky, but it just is. So we're just going to come into a ball here, and I'm going to click and drag and make a ball, and I'm going to go in the numeric panel, and I'm just going to make sure it's even across the board, right? So I'm going to go 5, 5, 5. And we're going to stretch this thing up, and I'm going to make this 24 by 24 too. So then I'll just minimize this. I'll drop the tool, and then I'll just go and put it at F2. Okay, and then that is that. So I'm assuming you've seen the tutorial on how to create the outer sphere. So we're just going to just keep that tutorial separately. So you're going to save that whole sphere out, and we're creating this as its own separate object. Do not try to create them together or put them in different layers. Create them as two separate objects. So in fact, I would say make the floor plane first and then make this sphere second and bring it in. So anyway, once we're here, I'm going to go into the back view, and I'm going to make this big, and I'll hit A to bring it in. Make sure that we're on polygons down here, and then I'm going to right click and select this upper part of the sphere here, and then what we're going to do is delete that, and then we're going to come over to points and select that, and now we're going to select all these points except for the upper row of points. So we're going to select all these points, then we're going to hit T, and this one is kind of a judgment call on this, and you'll see what I mean in a minute here. We'll hit Control, and we're going to drag this up. And how far to drag it is just kind of eyeball it, but make sure that it's beneath the 0 on the y-axis. That's very, very important, and I did not fully appreciate this. And so we bring it up to there, and then we'll drop the tool. The points are still selected. We're going to come up here to the Detail tab, go to Set Value, and a good one to do is do it on the Y and do negative 0.04 and go Enter. And that's going to create that. Once that's done, we can jump back into here. Let's pull out a little bit, and there is our floor plane sphere, or whatever you want to call it. And now I'm going to go ahead and deselect those points, and then I'm going to come back into polygon, and then I'm going to hit F and flip it. And now we have our floor plane, the basic structure of our floor plane. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this big, and I'm going to come over here, hold down Shift, and select one of these, this lip. See how it created this lip? And I'm going to select two of those, at least two. Then we'll come over here to select loop, and we're going to delete that lip like that. And ta-da! That is our floor plane sphere. So now what you need to do is have an HDRI image, 8K, and we're going to project this onto the surface of this floor plane. So I'm going to come in here. This is important. On the surface editor, it cannot be principled BSDF. It's got to be, what I set it to? It's got to be standard. This will not work with principled BSDF. And since we're here, let's go ahead and get rid of the specular and turn the diffuse up to 100, like that. And there we go with that. And now let's go load an HDRI image, because that's what this is all about. Is we're going to go into the surface editor, and we can do this all here in Modeler. There it is, right there. I'm going to delete those. Then we'll come over here to image, and I already have an HDRI image. Now this one is a pretty unforgiving one, and it's a lonely road. And you might do better with just a flat even surface because this has edges on the side of the road with some foliage. And so I think that creates a problem, but I want to show you something interesting about that. When you bring it in, we just got to go into edit image and go ahead and set it to linear. Make sure it's all set to linear there. And then we're going to project this spherically on the Y, and then we just plug it in here. Now this is the interesting part. So when we come and look at this, I've done this so many times. This is so interesting to me. So we're going to actually, when we take this into layout, we're going to scale this up. But notice this. Let me close some of these windows here. If I hit T, let me actually go back into this view here. If I hit T, I want you to see something here. Now, I can tell from having done this before that this is going to look like a road here. And in this section here, this is going to be the area of highest resolution that we're going to get on the floor plane. And the more we go out from the center, this projection center, things are going to distort. So you can shift this area around in layout to get varying degrees of resolution. So, but once we set the projection here in Modeler, it essentially locks it so that when we go into layout, we won't be able to change the way this is projecting. So if I just leave this at the default size that it is right now, and then I created a sky sphere, the sky sphere is going to line up with this pretty well. But if I drag this down too far, then I'm going to have problems lining this road up with the sky sphere road, the road that projects onto the sky sphere. So, but I want to show you something. If I hit T and I hold down Control, now watch what happens when I pull down on this plane here in Modeler. It's so interesting. Look how, do you see how it's changing? What's so interesting about this is here on the side of the road where there's some foliage, this actually looks really good. Like it hardly distorts right here. So if we go into layout and look at this, you'll see if we were to leave it here at this level, this foliage here is going to actually look pretty good. And the road is going to be pretty wide. And so it's a judgment call is what I'm saying, is where you want to pull this in Modeler, how far down on the y-axis you want to pull this. But wherever you pull it, it's going to lock on that projection when you take it into layout. So then if we take this into layout and move this plane up, this level of resolution is going to stay the same. This is going to stay the same. So it's a judgment call on you whether you want to leave it right where you originally created it, or if you want to pull it down a little bit more. You'll just have to play around with where you want this to project. But it needs to be below 0 on the y-axis. So anyway, I'm just going to leave it pulled down a little bit more. Then once that's done, we're essentially done with the HDRI floor plane. And I just need to come up here and go Save Object As. I've done this too many times. I'm going to call this HDRI2 and go Save. And then we're just going to send this over into layout. And it just takes a second. I think there's only one in there. Do I have two in here? No, I just have one. Okay, great. So now let's go into perspective here. And there you can see our projection here. And it looks like nothing is, it looks horrible from here, but it actually is going to look pretty good. So I'm going to just kind of get down here a little bit more. Just reposition myself. Now, while I have this selected here, I can go into properties and we're going to leave everything pretty much on, except I'm going to turn off cast shadow and self shadow, because we don't want this casting a shadow. But everything else can stay the same here. And it's not, and you can play around with like how it's affected with the different lights, excluding it too. That's another option to do. So let's also go ahead and just bring in a model, a cube for reference here. See where that comes in. I don't see where that came in. It might be behind me. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to match my perspective, come up here to camera view, and then let's take a look at this in VPR. What happened? You know what? I'm actually in the cube. Okay, so let me pull out here. Oh, where I must be inside the cube right there. Oh, there it is. I see it right there. Hold on. That was weird. That kind of threw me off. So the scale seems weird in here right now. So let me jump back into perspective view and get my bearings here. Mind you, right now, we haven't scaled this. So if I look over here, this is what I was talking about, the foliage on the side of the road. See how it's distorted and stretched? But notice like right here, it doesn't look half bad, right? And what's amazing is if we look at the road itself, I think the road looks really, really good. I mean, it looks like there's a lot of detail in there. But the side here kind of gives it away, right? So that's why I'm saying if you had a completely flat image, then you could probably get away with this. But here is kind of giving it away. But one thing we haven't done yet is we haven't scaled any of this. And I think that's why it looks so weird, because this is really small, this looks really big. So let's go on the floor plane here, and let's go ahead and scale this up. And we can scale it up pretty big, and we're going to need to scale it up pretty big. So let's do 40, 40, 40, and you'll see how small this starts looking here. The cube's getting smaller and smaller as I pull away. You see how small the cube is now? But notice, if I look over here, we're getting a distorted view here. But I don't know if you can tell, but here, this actually doesn't look half bad. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. I'm going to zoom in here on the side of the road to show you a little bit clearer. And we can see our shadow. You see that there on our cube? But look here how it's not the foliage. It actually looks pretty good here. It's distorting here a little bit, but here right on the roadside, that's pretty amazing how that looks. So anyway, let's go, let me match my perspective and go into camera view here, and then we'll go here. And there it is. And I think we're pretty close to the resolution center, because this would have come in at the origin, and this whole ground plane was at the origin. So here you can see the level of detail we're getting is pretty good. So, and we are in our, but we can, adjust the camera, and there's different things we can do. We can slide this plane around and things like that. So let's go ahead and rotate. Let me rotate this way where I'm looking pretty much at the side of the road. And like I said, this is a tougher image to work with, because we do have this side of the road to deal with. And that's not the same as if we were just looking at a flat level texture. But I want to just grab this object real quick, and you can mess around with this for quite a while. Well, I don't mean to move the plane. I want to move the object. Let's see. I want to move it. Here we go. This way. And let's bring it down a little closer to the road here, to where we see the shadow. And then I can adjust the camera too. So I just feel like this is so great, because it gives you so much opportunity. Now, ideally, if you were to bring in a sky sphere now, if I'm on the camera, let me adjust my pitch. See, depending on the angle that you were going to get, you could actually get some not too bad of imagery here from this angle. The level of detail I think is pretty great. And from here, it's just a question of bringing in the sky sphere. And like I said, you might have to jump back into Modeler to get this to all line up. Because right now, all we have is the HDRI floor plane. Now, last thing I'm going to do here is just to show you, I want to go on pitch, I'm sure. I'm going to look down the other way. I'm going to forget about this cube for a minute here and show you something. So if we look down the road this way, and like I said, because we took this further down on the y-axis, it made the road wider, and of course you can see distortion here and stuff. So this is, like I said, it's a pretty unforgiving image to work with because of this side of the road and this foliage. But as this goes off into the distance, one thing we can do is if we select the floor plane here, and we have an option here under render that we can dissolve this into the distance a little bit, and that can help blend it in to the background here. So we can take this out a little ways, like to there, or maybe a little bit more. And what's interesting about this, if I wanted to bring in a sky now or something like that, or we have this seam, right? But if you think about it, there's a number of ways that you could hide this seam if you wanted. So there's a lot of possibilities to play around with is the bottom line. And so like, I don't know, real quick, I don't know if I have a, let's just try something real fast here. What happens if we bring in, let me see. And I don't know how this is going to look, but what happens if I come down here on the pitch and I look more toward the sky here, you'll see this is such a sharp line, but I believe it would be possible to hide that with either props or something in the way, or anything really that you could think of to hide this line, because that's a pretty sharp line. But we have our sky sphere, so I don't know, and this isn't probably going to look all that great, but let me just go into the environment light here, and let's go to the environment light. And we don't have, if I can kill this light completely, look what we get. You see, we still have a pretty sharp line there, but the sky is the limit, really, what you could do now, as far as what you could bring in and stuff like that. A lot of possibility, a lot of options. A lot of it depends on how far you bring the floor plane down on the y-axis. So anyway, that's all I had for today. I hope you found it helpful. Take care, have a great day, and I will talk to you next time.